What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing people who have had alleged curses swirling around them. I want to start this video off right away by saying that I don't technically believe that 99% of the people or more who think that they've been cursed actually are. Little spells and charms here and there to make someone have a run of or a bit of bad luck, I have seen, and I could easily do that myself. But actual curses take up so much time, effort, and energy that I highly doubt that most of the population of people who are capable of cursing someone would want to be bothered. However, that's only been in my personal experience, and I don't and can't speak for everyone, obviously. There's no doubt that some people seem to attract a bit more of negativity and all-around high strangeness than others, and that's basically what I believe we're actually covering here today. The people involved mostly think they've been cursed, though, and I want you to make your own decision as to what you think is happening by the end of this video, as always, and let me know in the comments once you come to your own conclusions what you think is really going on. Is it fate? Is it just simple misfortune, or is it the will of some enemy, whether known or unknown, seen or unseen, that's the reason or the cause for the string of unhappiness and the fear it instills in these people that everything seems to be happening to and focused on? It's beyond the comprehension of most people being cursed or cursing someone else, but the people I'm bringing to you today seriously believe that there is some sort of darkness, some malevolent, shadowy force that they're unable to see that's the cause for everything bad that's either ever happened to them or that is suddenly all over happening to them. That's in the case of those who didn't pass away allegedly due to the curse. There's just a lot here. It was a lot to put into words, so just try and follow me here. These people, or people who have looked into what happened to these particular people, believe that they're being haunted by something beyond their own ability to understand, and that whatever it is, or whomever, that's the cause of all of it, has brought nothing to them but misfortune, bad luck, and even, a lot of the time, death. One more thing before we get started, and this is really important. There is no such thing as luck, whether it's bad or good or anything in between, and that's the only fact I can give you regarding these situations. With all of that being said, let's jump right in. We talked a couple of weeks ago in a different video about people who are allegedly able to kill using nothing but their minds, and that's the first thing we are discussing here today too. This one goes way back, and it's about a humble Italian immigrant who lived in the early 19th century in the rough and tumble 5 Points neighborhood in New York City. This man, Casoli, was said to have been able to kill by using nothing but a simple gaze upon someone. The area of 5 Points at the time was largely considered an absolute and actual hellhole, known for violent crimes, gang activity, filth, and massive corruption. Despite all of that, it seems as though everyone in the neighborhood knew that they needed to give Casoli, who on the surface seemed to be nothing more than a simple banana salesman, a very wide berth. He was physically unimposing, he spoke very quietly, but the rumors about him swirled, and they said that he had the power to kill other people merely by gazing at or touching them. The rumors seem to have started from a bunch of unfortunate events and overall misfortune that seemed to have followed Casoli all the way from Italy, in that it seems as though he had been dealing with whatever it was before he even emigrated to America. When he was a little boy, he lived with his brother and brother-in-law, working with them as a stable boy in the small Italian village of Terra del Mero. On one occasion, he got angry and threw a small rock at a horse he was supposed to be handling, but he missed, and the rock struck his brother just at the right spot on his head to kill him on the spot right then and there. Not long after that happened, Casoli was using a rum jug to hold pesticides, but his brother-in-law mistook it for a liquor jug. Well, it was technically a liquor jug, but for some reason, little Casoli had filled it with very toxic chemicals, and his brother-in-law drank from it and died. His death was absolutely agonizing and gruesome, being the kind of poison it was, pesticide poisoning, especially back then. After that, rumors spread quickly throughout the tiny village that the boy was a jinx, someone who brought bad luck upon anyone he associated with, and that he was surely someone who possessed the so-called evil eye. Now, we know the evil eye to be something different, but back then it was someone who can put a curse on you by simply looking at you. as bizarre as that sounds. All of the speculation, combined with how superstitious people in the area and really all over the place were back then, caused this little boy to have to flee the country to protect himself and for his own safety. However, his alleged power to inadvertently kill those around him didn't stay back in Italy and seemingly followed him wherever he went and eventually followed him across the waters to the United States. The first place he went was somewhere else in Italy, as he didn't board a ship for the United States right away. In this new place, he got a really good job helping to build a water tunnel, but soon after, he made an unfortunate error that resulted in a freak accident where 21 other men who were working with him ended up drowning to death. Once again, rumors swirled, and even without the previous things that had been said about him being known, with the way the times were and considering the location of the tragedy, the family members and friends of those 21 unfortunate deceased men would be looking for revenge, if nothing else. So Casoli ran again. He eventually settled in the town of Pozzuoli, where he gained employment aboard a cargo ship. While aboard the ship, he got sick and almost died. He had an extremely high fever that was accompanied by an unquenchable thirst. To try and get himself some relief, he would drink a ton of water, but he drank it directly from the ship's water supply, thereby contaminating it and causing many others on the ship to fall ill with the same symptoms of whatever condition Casoli had come down with, and many of those men died as a result. Casoli was very small, and he was very frail, especially right after he became better from the sickness, but that didn't stop at least one extremely large man from becoming incredibly angry and going after him because he had been the one to contaminate the water. They all knew it. Everyone knew he was the first one to have come down with the sickness and thereby deduced that because of him, so many others got sick and died. This extremely large man physically assaulted Casoli, but another crew member jumped in to help Casoli out. Seeing the fight wouldn't have been a fair one, and for whatever reasons he had, he took Casoli's side. It didn't end well. During the ensuing melee, his protector was stabbed to death, and not too long after that is when he came to America, hoping to outrun the rumors and bad luck that seemingly had been plaguing him for years at that point, and probably for his whole life up to that point as well. It continued though, and it said that more than 50 people died because of some association with Casoli Paracardi. Their deaths were all freak accidents, and he was never able to escape the macabre reputation he had inadvertently gained because of it. So, was he cursed? Was he woefully unlucky? Or was he just a very clever serial killer? I mean, let's be real. That's just as reasonable, in my opinion, as anything else. Because if you think about it, he put pesticides in a liquor jug knowing his brother-in-law was going to drink that, right? Like, he knew. That's the only thing that made me think about this guy. Like, was he doing this stuff on purpose? I don't know, but my opinion on the matter is there's no such thing as curses. And even if there were, it seems there would need to be someone putting energy into such a thing in order for it to be so powerfully strong and effective over the course of so many years. As far as him being unlucky, there's also no such thing as luck. Sorry to disappoint, one way or another, as I already said. And I think he just happened to be the bringer of great misfortune. Probably he had some attachments he and everyone around him were unaware of. But think of it like this. We now know about the power of words and also about the power of manifestation, right? If you were so unfortunate as to accidentally kill the only family you had left around you, both of them in such quick succession, you might start to think that maybe there was something wrong with you. Again, think about the time and place all of this occurred, and you would understand too that once others started saying he was cursed and that he had nothing but bad luck, that he was a jinx, he started thinking it and therefore could have manifested it. Because he had no idea what he was doing as he was inadvertently doing it, and had entire villages feeding that particular and pretty horrible manifestation, it became reality. It became his fate. Moving right along to the early morning hours of November 17th, 1919, when a Mrs. Myrtle Dean decided to go upstairs and check on her husband, a rancher whose name was Fred Dean, at their home in Paso Robles in Southern California. She expected that he would be sleeping, and she was just going to check on him because she said she kept hearing odd sounds that seemed like they were coming from his room. What she didn't expect to find was her husband dead and with his body in a fairly grisly state of being. It was a macabre scene, with Fred's throat slit from ear to ear, his skull split in half from the force of some still unknown blunt object, and his body covered in very dark bruises from head to toe. That is what she found, though, a bloodbath, and obviously upset and shocked, feeling things I can't possibly name here for you, I'm sure, because I have no idea how that feels. She called the local authorities immediately. When investigators arrived, they saw the scene wasn't only bloody, but it was also a little bit weird, too. Fred Dean had the firearm he always kept next to him still in the same spot it always was kept, and it hadn't been used, despite it having been within arm's reach of him. He hadn't even reached for the firearm. There was no sign that he had fought back or defended himself at all. No sign that he had even tried to fend off his attacker, who had inflicted such brutal and savage wounds upon his entire body. It was impossible to imagine that someone would simply sleep through such a savage attack. And there was no sign of any break-in, no murder weapon anywhere to be found, and no sign of forced entry into the home or the bedroom. In fact, there was nothing to show that there had ever been anyone else in the room with him at all, except Myrtle, who said she walked in on it. The investigators also wondered how such a violent and vicious attack could have been carried out without Myrtle having heard anything or waking up herself. After a preliminary investigation, the police suspected that Myrtle had been the killer and that she had brutally carried out the deadly and bloody attack on her own husband and then reported it to the police as though there had been a murderous intruder. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? That's what I was thinking to begin with. Myrtle, though, insisted that she was innocent, and she told the police, quote, "I was sleeping downstairs with my little girl who has been ill. The train that goes through Paso Robles at 5 o'clock awakened me. Then I heard a noise that I thought came from my cat, and I opened the door to let her in. But she came from a different direction. I thought it was peculiar, but it returned to the couch. I then heard a noise as though something heavy was being moved. I called Fred, but he did not answer. I then ventured up the stairs and saw that Fred's door was standing open. I called him again without receiving any reply. Then I ran into his room and turned on the light," end quote. Regardless of any of that, Myrtle Dean was found guilty of murder, declared insane, and locked away in the state hospital, which was also a mental asylum at Agnews. While she was there, she would tell anyone who would listen that she and her husband lived in a haunted house and that they had been experiencing all sorts of paranormal activity there for years. It just wasn't something you talked about back then, and so they made sure and took great care to keep it to themselves. Obviously, and again, considering the times, this only led even more to the conclusion that Myrtle was a lunatic, right? In those people's eyes. She was considered to be stark raving mad, and everything she said about the haunting and paranormal activity was taken as more proof of that. Now, in looking deeper into this, I saw that someone did some research and found out that the ranch in the home where Myrtle and Fred lived was built right on top of a site that had been used by an early 19th century Native American medicine man whose name was Hugo, and he had cursed the land because he was pissed at the white settlers who stole the land and so much more from him and his ancestors. In fact, right on the property, there's a huge boulder with the words etched into it, quote, "Upon all hereafter coming wrongfully upon this land shall fall a curse," end quote. Those words allegedly were written by none other than Hugo himself. Obviously, this story was sensational, especially back then, because someone on the outside of the hospital who had looked into Myrtle's claims released the story about Hugo and the curse afterwards. It was sensational news for the time, and it caused the case of the murder of Fred Dean to be cast into the world of the bizarre, and rumor had it he had indeed fallen victim to Hugo's curse. Those who believed that also believed Myrtle was completely innocent of the crime. Those rumors were fueled even more when it was found that 20 years earlier to when Fred died, a 3-year-old girl who had been living with the family in the very same house had been found strangled to death under very mysterious and unexplained circumstances. After her death, her parents either went or were considered to be stark raving mad as well. They were convicted for her murder and sent to the same asylum as Myrtle. So, is there anything to all of this? Was Fred Dean and possibly the child before him the victims of a curse placed on the land where their home was by a long deceased but still vengeful native medicine man? I don't know, but I do think it's worth looking more into. At the end of the day, though, nothing helped Myrtle, and she died in the asylum as far as I could find, but she proclaimed her innocence until the day she died. It could have been nothing more than the brutal murder of a man, either by his wife or by some shadowy intruder. But could have been something more too. Those kinds of ancient land curses, I do believe in, because those are a whole different type of magic than me cursing one of you or one of you cursing me. Another story that seems to be circled around by an ominous curse revolves a family that was plagued with somewhat bizarre and mysterious deaths. In February of 1928, the wife of Dr. Samuel Oliver Netherton was found dead in their farmhouse. Dr. Netherton was a very prominent physician in the area, and he was highly respected and regarded in the community he lived in rural Kansas. His wife's cause of death was glaringly obvious, as half of her head had been blown off by a gunshot to the back of it. However, what wasn't so obvious is who had done it to her. She was a kind and decent woman who had no known enemies, and no one could think of a reason as to why anyone would have wanted her dead. Despite having a rock-solid alibi, Dr. Netherton was the prime suspect, but no murder weapon was ever found. Despite being an eminent and well-respected physician, in very short order, he was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. While in custody, he spoke about the Strahl family, which were his in-laws and his wife's family. He said that the Strahls had been the victim of a deadly supernatural curse for decades leading up to her death. His wife's name was Edith, and in 1882, her mother's nephew, a frontier trapper by the name of Dodie Strahl, so her cousin, died under mysterious circumstances as well. Dodie's brother, whose name was Roll Strahl, had been found shot to death in the back of a wagon a few years after Dodie's mysterious death, and then in 1916, Arthur Strahl was shot to death in Chicago. It's unknown what Arthur Strahl's relation was to the family, but he was indeed related. The details have just been lost to time. A few years after that death, a man named Paxton Wire, who was Edith's second cousin, was found shot to death in a hotel room in Los Angeles. In every single case, no killer had been caught. The bullet wounds were not self-inflicted, and Dr. Netherton insisted with all that he had that Edith had just been the latest victim of that deadly curse. He loudly pleaded with investigators and proclaimed his innocence, but unfortunately for him, no one believed him, and he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He was released in 1949 when another inmate in the same prison confessed to killing Edith and allegedly provided details only the killer would have known. Let's get into something just a little bit more recent here and discuss the curse that seemingly followed around the late, great musician, John Lennon. In his case, the whole curse and ordeal seems to revolve around the number 9 for whatever reason. The list of synchronicities and weird examples of the revolution of the number 9 in his life are very, very long. Let's start with the fact that he was born on October 9th, 1940. Side note, just 64 years later on that same day, my baby boy Damien was also born in 2004. Okay, he has John Lennon's birthday. I couldn't put that in there without putting that, so never mind. The first place John Lennon lived was 9 Newcastle Road, Wavertree, Liverpool, with 3 main words of the address, each having 9 letters each. The Beatles, the legendary band that John had been such a huge part of, first appeared at the Cavern Club on February 9th, 1961, and they were discovered and then catapulted and pushed into superstardom on November 9th of that same year. 1961, when they were discovered by their manager, Brian Epstein, after which they went on to perform on the super popular show for the time, The Ed Sullivan Show. They performed on Sullivan's Show on November 9th, 1966, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono's son, Sean Lennon, was born on October 9th, 1975. So his son, Sean, and he shared a birthday. During his solo career, John Lennon's 1974 album called Walls and Bridges, which was his 9th solo outing, featured a song called Number 9 Dream, which was released in September, which is the 9th month of the year. The cover of that album features on it an illustration of a footballer with the number 9 painted on his back. The single of that same song, Number 9 Dream, debuted at number 9 on the Billboard Top 100 chart in the United States. Strangely enough, the 2 albums, the one released before and the one released right after Walls and Bridges, were Mind Games and Rock and Roll, and they both have 9 letters in the names of them. I mean, this would be enough for me to be concerned, but it gets more strange, more mysterious, and even more malevolent, so let's keep going. John Lennon left the Beatles after they were together for 9 years, and on December 8th, 1980, which would have actually been December 9th in Lennon's hometown of Liverpool, England, because of time zone differences, he was shot and killed by a lone gunman named Mark David Chapman. You would think that this would have been the end of the curse that orbited John Lennon his whole life, but you would be wrong, at least not where the number 9 is concerned. In the aftermath of being shot, he was taken to Roosevelt Hospital, which is located on 9th Avenue in Manhattan, and both the words Roosevelt and Manhattan have 9 letters in them. John Lennon wasn't oblivious to how the number 9 seemed to be a constant in his life and how it always loomed menacingly above him at all times. He thought it had some sort of deep numerical or numerological significance, but obviously it's unclear if all of this was a spooky coincidence or an unfortunate series of tragic and oftentimes mundane events that circled this number, or if it had any real effect and significance on his life or not. There's just no way to know what it all meant, if it meant anything at all. I think a lot of it is pushing and reaching, and a lot of it could also be what we briefly discussed earlier about people inadvertently and accidentally manifesting things into reality they shouldn't be, but that they don't know that they are and therefore can't stop. It would be a series of extreme coincidences. And since I believe a coincidence is just a connection that hasn't been made yet, I do believe there's something to this, but have no idea what and don't have time for the rabbit hole it would all take me down into. You guys wouldn't see me for like a year if I delved into this. I will say the angelic significance of the number 9 is selflessness, universal love and understanding, heavy spiritual growth, and completion. So do it that way you will. Strangely enough, John Lennon had a friend who was also a very well-respected musician in his own right, who also had a curse connected to him, seemingly. It was one of Lennon's closest friends, a singer and songwriter named Harry Nilsson, and he was not only a good friend, but he was also a frequent creative collaborator with John Lennon. Nilsson enjoyed some fame and success in the late 60s and early 70s with songs such as Everybody's Talkin', Without You, Coconut, and Jump Into the Fire. All of those songs and the album they were included on, which was called Pussycats, were produced by John Lennon himself. Nilsson's curse didn't affect him except for his wild and rampant, full-blown alcoholism, of which he was completely unrepentant about, so much as it affected the band who was along for the ride with him. In 1971, he covered a song by the group, who were relatively minor at the time, called Badfinger, and the song Nilsson covered was a song Without You. That cover song, Without You, became a great success and runaway hit, and that was great for Nilsson. It was hugely successful and widely known, but it did almost nothing to help the group Badfinger, who had been the writers and original performers of the song. They owned the song but weren't profiting from the successes of Nilsson covering it. They earned almost no royalties and were then plagued by very hard times. During that time, a series of strange deaths also befell them, and it all happened within the ranks of the band. The singer, songwriter, and guitarist from the group, his name was Pete Ham. He unalived himself by hanging in his garage first. After that, the band's bassist, Tom Evans, would follow Pete's example and unalive himself in the exact same way. All that was left was the drummer, Michael Gibbons, who died mysteriously in his sleep at the age of just 56 years old. The alleged curse would continue to spread and spider out into other people who had connections with Nilsson. In July of 1974, the American singer and actress Cass Elliot had just finished an extremely successful performance at the Palladium when she decided to borrow Nilsson's one-bedroom Mayfair flat immediately after. She suddenly passed away from heart failure at only 32 years old. Then, in 1978, legendary rocker Keith Moon also died at the age of 32 in the very same bed, in the very same flat, Nilsson's, after taking an overdose of heminervin tablets that had been prescribed to him because at the time he was trying to medically detox off of alcohol and the medication was supposed to help, but he didn't go into a treatment. And when I say the very same bed in the very same flat, Cass Elliot died in that bed in that flat. So 6 of those heminervin tablets were enough to kill a person, but Keith took a whopping 36 of them all at one time. Side note here, guys, he must have been really struggling and suffering through some pretty serious withdrawals, and I feel horrible that that happened to him. Also, once Cass died on the bed, wouldn't you go and at least get a new bed? Not that the death was particularly gory or anything. She had a heart attack, but guys, please, if someone dies on a piece of furniture in your home and you're able to replace it, please do so. And also, if you aren't, don't go and have other people unknowingly sleeping on it afterwards. Cleanse it, clear it, release it, and then let people know that that's where they're sleeping. On January 15th, 1994, Nilsson himself passed away due to heart failure at the age of 54. Was it all a coincidence? I'm not so sure, and I would be willing to bet that Mr. Nilsson there had done some shady dealings with something or someone, some force that he didn't understand fully to begin with. I hope his soul has found peace, though. I really and sincerely do, because this seems like, I don't want to say a deal with the devil, but it seems like a deal with the devil type bit here, where like everyone around him, and he thinks he's getting away with it. But I really don't know. I don't know what happened, obviously. I mean, guys, we just talked about a huge and massive celebrity when we discussed John Lennon, and since I'm on the subject, I don't think any list of people, especially one of celebrities who were said to have had curses following them and all around them in their midst, would be complete if I didn't mention Bruce Lee, right? This one is somewhat spooky, guys, and it's said to have all started when Bruce Lee's father, Lee Hoi Chuen, crossed paths with some rather nefarious merchants while in China. For one reason or another, the merchants ended up putting a curse on Lee Hoi, specifying that all of his male ancestors from there on out would die young. It's said as well that the curse reared its ugly head for the very first time when Bruce's parents lost their first child, and they were immediately convinced that the curse was real. I want to point out here that it's more than likely where the so-called curse started to gain traction and power, because this is when they started believing and therefore feeding into it, okay? This is how curses take on a life of their own. This is how you end up cursed. Okay, when you start feeding and playing into it and really believing that you are, more than likely you're not, but you're going to be. I know it's a total mind F, guys. It's something that takes a lot to understand, but just be aware of that. Okay, if you walk around thinking you have a dark cloud hanging over you, you are cultivating that dark cloud. So his parents fed the manifestation, and the universe vibrated the energy and fear that they were putting out into it right back to them in kind. In order to try and fend off the black magic they believed had killed their child, and I don't know how the child died, but I know he died young, possibly as an infant, but I really couldn't find much despite looking a little bit further into it. I found that his parents didn't refer to him as Bruce and instead called him by a female name so that the alleged spirits haunting them and looking to take all the male heirs and ancestors would be confused and move on. So in order to throw the spirits off, they called him Soy Fawn, which means little phoenix, despite Bruce being born in the year of the dragon at the hour of the dragon. If everything they thought to be true really was happening, apparently it didn't work. I mean, it worked for a little while, but in 1973, Bruce began to have serious health problems that seemed to have come out of the clear blue sky. They came out of nowhere. The sudden seizures were mysterious, and no one could figure out what was causing them. During the making of Enter the Dragon, the seizures began, and they became progressively worse throughout filming. Eventually, the doctors he was seeing would find a cause, but it would just be as inexplicable as the seizures had been themselves. He had swelling on his brain, but there seemed to have been no cause for it. On July 20th, 1973, Bruce died under some mysterious and somewhat shifty circumstances when he allegedly just collapsed in Hong Kong while meeting with a producer about the movie Game of Death. He was immediately rushed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. The alleged curse didn't stop with him, though, and true to the promise made by the shady and malevolent merchants from the beginning, it seems as though it moved right along to the next male in line in the Lee family, Bruce's son, Brandon Lee. Oh, I love Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee was just 29 years old when he was shooting the movie The Crow, which, by the way, I saw and loved and never stopped watching and have become obsessed with ever since it first came out, really, because I'm old like that. It was March 31st, 1993. I had turned 10 30 days earlier, and Brandon and the rest of the cast and crew were in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Brandon and actor Michael Massey were shooting a scene where Massey's character shoots Lee's character with a .44 Magnum that was supposed to just be filled with blanks. When Brandon collapsed and the scene was called to cut, he didn't get back up. There had apparently been dummy shells still in the gun from the previous scene. The dummy shells were basically real bullets, but they didn't have any gunpowder, and they were only used to make the close-up scenes with shooting seem more realistic to the audience. However, when whoever was in charge of cleaning out those guns from the previous scenes prepped the gun for that scene, they never cleaned the gun out, and therefore the dummy shell was in there still, and the gunpowder from the blank ended up propelling it from the dummy cartridge exactly as if it were a real bullet. It ended up killing 29-year-old Brandon Lee, who was pronounced dead later that night at the New Hanover Regional Medical Center in Wilmington, North Carolina. Despite the official ruling on Brandon Lee's tragic death being that it was a freak accident, the strange nature of it all sparked countless conspiracy theories and rumors, further fueling the speculation that there was some sort of ancient curse involved with both his death and the death of his legendary father. Was the scene from the movie Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, which was said to have been based on his real life, where Bruce was fighting and doing battle with a shadowy demon that was meant to represent the dark force and curse that was said to have been haunting his family thanks to the merchants in China who placed it upon his father. It was filmed before the accident on the set of the movie The Crow. Dragon came out just 2 months after Brandon's untimely death. I believe in the scene, the demon Bruce was battling lost interest in him and turned its attention to his son, Brandon. That's what I discovered and came up with. I've never actually seen the movie. There was also a lot of speculation about the Chinese mafia being involved, and the media jumped on that and the idea that there was a curse on the male ancestors of the family. Did Hoy, Bruce, and Brandon carry on a multi-generational curse? If they did it end with Brandon, since he wasn't even able to have any children? He died so young, male or female. What about Bruce's sisters and their kids? Do they have sons? Does the curse affect them? I would love to dive into that rabbit hole, and maybe I will one day, but for now, that's all I have on the curse of the Lee family. There's an even more well-known case of a dark curse that causes mysterious deaths surrounding a movie, and I wasn't sure I wanted to include this one here because I plan on doing a whole video or perhaps even a series, depending on how many there are, about so-called movie curses, but I figured why not? How about the alleged curse on the movie Poltergeist and all of the people involved with it? The series, the franchise Poltergeist, really. Now, before I dive into this one, I want to give y'all a bit of a disclaimer. I've heard people who were associated with the movie, and I listened to the loved ones of the deceased speak on this, and some of them get very angry and extremely upset when the deaths of their loved ones are reduced down to nothing more than some malevolent force wandering around and indiscriminately killing off actors for no known reason, one by one. I mean, no harm or disrespect to any of the loved ones of the deceased or the deceased themselves, and I'm trying to just generally speak here on the possibility that there was perhaps a curse on that franchise, that movie, or not. I appreciate your understanding. Now, let's get into this one. Poltergeist, the original, came out in 1982, and it was directed by Tobe Hooper, and it was actually written and produced by none other than Steven Spielberg. It's about a regular suburban family, the Freelings, who are dealing with a terrifying invasion of malevolent spirits who appear somehow in the form of poltergeist activity, mainly focusing on their youngest child, a daughter named Carol Ann. The phantoms in the movie kidnapped the little girl. It's really a farce if you know anything about such things in real life, but at the time, it was groundbreaking and unlike anything that had ever been done in cinematic theater before. The entities and phantoms and forces in the movie are somehow beholden to some sort of demonic thing only referred to as the beast throughout the movie. The film has been noted time and again for its unnerving atmosphere and the absolute ability to exploit many of most people's most popular childhood fears. Timeless fears like something under the bed, creepy and possibly possessed and haunted dolls, and of course, the strange-looking tree outside of the bedroom window that constantly morphs and changes as the light reflecting around it does. It really did traumatize a generation, and even though I was born a year after it was released, it terrified and traumatized me too, possibly more so than most people were aware of at the time, because of my real-life abilities to see those things regularly anyways. The movie was a huge success when it was released in 1982 and went on to spawn 2 sequels and a remake, none of which lived up to the original in my humble opinion, but I never really think that they do. Sequels, prequels, and remakes, While all of that is well and good, the movie is also noted for and remembered as having one of the most notorious movie curses looming around and over it. Let's take a look. Before filming even began, things on the set of the movie were described as creepy. There's a rumor that the filmmakers decided that they didn't want to use prop plastic skeletons, but instead wanted to use real-life deceased cadavers and human bones because the prop skeletons would have been too expensive to create. The skeletons in question were mainly used for the scene at the end where the mother, played by JoBeth Williams, finds herself at the bottom of a half-filled swimming pool in some sludge and with a bunch of human cadavers as she tries desperately to claw her way out, and as the skeletons try to attack her and keep her in there. JoBeth herself said that the skeletons used were those of real human beings, but she said she wasn't informed about that and didn't find out until much later that that was the case. Allegedly, Steven Spielberg didn't share that fact with anyone else working on the movie, aside from those he absolutely had to, on the set at the time. JoBeth Williams later said about it, quote, "In my innocence and naivete, I assumed that these were not real skeletons. I assumed that they were prop skeletons made out of plastic or rubber. I found out, as did the crew, that they were using real skeletons because it's far too expensive to make fake skeletons out of rubber," end quote. Now, keep in mind that it's never been confirmed by Spielberg and that it's never been proven that those skeletons were real remains of deceased human beings, but most people think that this is what was done, and they also believe that's what served as the catalyst for what was about to start happening on the set and to many of the people involved in the making of the movie. It does seem that some sort of dark force hung over the movie and the people connected to it, because a string of terrible and unfortunate, sometimes incredibly heartbreaking and tragic events were about to unfold, and there's just too much there for it to be labeled as mere coincidence. Obviously, in my opinion. The first death happened just a few weeks after the original movie was released, when 22-year-old Dominique Dunne, who played Carol Ann's older sister and the eldest sibling in the movie, Dana Freeling, was brutally choked and strangled to death by her boyfriend on October 30th, 1982. She had been in a very abusive relationship for a while with a local chef named John Sweeney, and had only recently to her death kicked him out of the home they shared in Los Angeles at the time, having been fed up finally with the abuse, or so it said. On the night of the incident, Sweeney stopped by to try and work things out, which was something I'm sure he had done many times before, or tried to do many times before, given the nature and the patterns of severely abusive relationships, right? And the people that perpetuate them. The conversation quickly evolved into an argument, which led to Sweeney killing Dunne. He choked her and left her for dead right there where she fell. Someone must have found her or saw what happened or something, because she was eventually rushed to Cedars-Sinai Hospital and Medical Center in Los Angeles, where she remained unconscious for 4 more days, but she would never wake up again. Sweeney was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to only 6 years in prison, and unbelievably, he would serve only 3.5 years of that sentence. In 2009, Lou Perryman, who played the small role of someone named Pugsley, was murdered in his home by an axe-wielding escaped convict who had randomly broken in. I don't remember the character of Pugsley, but I honestly haven't seen the movie Poltergeist since I was like 10 years old. Like, it wasn't scary for me once I got older. When I was little, it was really scary. There were other less tragic but just as bizarre oddities that happened to the people surrounding this movie too. For example, Richard Lawson, who played the paranormal investigator named Ryan in the first film, was flying aboard US Air Flight 405 in March of 1992 when the plane crashed into Flushing Bay in New York. 27 of the 51 people on board the craft died, but Lawson wasn't one of them. He survived, but still, you gotta admit that's very strange on top of everything else that was happening surrounding that movie. During filming, Jo Beth Williams said that whenever she would return to her home from filming, all of the pictures with her in it that were hanging around the house were always upside down or crooked. The high strangeness and deaths would continue right through the sequels to the movie as well. Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, was released in 1986 and would bring with it 2 more famous or perhaps infamous deaths. Julian Beck played the evil preacher named Reverend Henry Kane in the film. He had been diagnosed with stomach cancer before taking on the role, and he would pass from that disease in September of 1985, just months before it hit the theater. So, okay, you know, the guy did know he had cancer, he did know he was dying, but still. In 1987, another cast member would die, and this time it was the man who played the Native American medicine man / shaman. His name was Will Sampson, and he was just 53 years old. He was maybe better known for playing the mute Native American in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. 6 weeks before he died, he had undergone surgery for a very risky heart-lung transplant, and he died of complications from that surgery 6 weeks after he had done it. The reason this is creepy is because during the filming of Poltergeist 2, Sampson had actually performed an exorcism on set because he was increasingly upset over the fact that the news was finally out that Spielberg had used real skeletons on the set of the first one. He wasn't upset that the news was out. He was upset because the news was finally out and he finally found out about it and he was not having it. So he performed this exorcism. He had obviously known about all of the other tragedies and near misses surrounding the cast and crew of the first movie, and he was concerned for everyone else involved. Other deaths related to the people who either starred in or had anything to do with the movie are often attributed to the curse as well. Zelda Rubinstein, that cute little lady who played the psychic with the cute voice in the movie, was called and told her mother had died while she was filming. And in 2004, the director of the remake, Brian Gibson, died of something called Ewing's sarcoma. I stopped there because it said director of the sequel, but it wasn't a sequel, it was a remake. Obviously, the most talked about and well-known death related to the movie, and that's always attributed to the curse, is that of 12-year-old Heather O'Rourke. She was the star of the movie and played the Freelys' youngest child, daughter Carol Ann, in all 3 of the original movies. The role was iconic, and she starred in the first one when she was only 6 years old. She fell ill in 1987 and was misdiagnosed with Crohn's disease, and when she was still falling sick a year later, despite having received long-term treatment for that disease, she was taken to the doctor and told she had the flu. The day after she was told she had the flu, she collapsed and she was unresponsive and rushed to the Children's Hospital in San Diego, California, where it was discovered that she had an obstructed bowel. On February 1st, 1988, which was just a few months before the release in theaters of Poltergeist 3, she would tragically die at the young age of just 12 years old during an emergency surgery, and it was only then determined that she had been suffering for a very long time and from the beginning from a congenital intestinal abnormality, which had gone undiagnosed, probably due to the misdiagnosis of the Crohn's disease. They thought it was Crohn's and therefore weren't looking for any other cause for her suffering. Heather had been charming, vibrant, and youthful right up until she collapsed after being misdiagnosed with the flu, and her untimely and seemingly sudden and senseless death shocked the public at the time. One more little odd thing about all of this is the fact that in one scene of the first film, a poster could be seen on Carol Ann's brother's wall. Her brother in the movie's name was Robbie, and that character was played by Oliver Robbins. The poster is for Super Bowl 22, which would actually be played in real life 6 years later, just one day after Heather died. It would be played in real life in the very same city where she died, too. Our last person to discuss here today is a popular Mexican broadcaster by the name of Juan Ramon Sáenz. He was well known for his late-night radio program, which translates in English to The Hairy Hand, which explored all areas of the paranormal and UFO phenomenon. The show was most well known for people being able to call in with their own paranormal and extraterrestrial experiences, and in its early years, the show was hugely popular not only in Mexico, but in several other countries as well. I guess it was syndicated. Sáenz was beloved because of his level-headed and reasoned way of interacting with the people that would call in. He kept an open mind and never mocked or belittled the people who called in with their experiences, whether he believed them or not. In many cases, he followed up the call with a personal investigation, and he helped many people because of that as well. And he would offer to come out or send people out to investigate whatever was going on with what these people were saying. One of the cases concerned a young man named Joshua who had a bizarre story to tell. He claimed that his family had been in dire financial straits and that he had made a deal with the devil in order to get out of it. According to Joshua, one of the requirements of the deal was that he had to kill someone who was important to him. He also said that any attempt to renege on the pact he had made with the devil would result in a curse, death, and misfortune on anyone and everyone around him who he cared about and with whom he came into close contact with, not to mention the people meddling in the affairs of the devil. It was a wild story, but Sáenz didn't back down from a challenge and offered to help the young man get out of the deal with the devil. Sáenz went to interview Joshua in a boat because one or both of them thought that demons wouldn't be able to harm them there. I don't know what the logic behind that is, but it sounds like just the kind of superstition I come about in my line of work that gets people killed. Regardless, it didn't work because everyone who was on the boat at the time of the interview suffered various tragedies. The cameraman needed some sort of emergency surgery, of which I couldn't really find what that was. The lead investigator on the case, a woman named Maria Estrada, suffered a very serious car accident, and even the pastor who had accompanied Joshua there was in some sort of freak accident. Again, though, I could not find details as to what it was, what happened to him either. What happened to all of them was nothing, though, compared to what happened to Sáenz. Not long after the interview, he fell ill with a mysterious gastrointestinal bacterium that led him to going into cardiac arrest, which killed him at the young age of just 48 years old. Did the devil make good on his promise, or is it all just a coincidence and nothing to look further into? You all know what I'm going to say, so I'm not even going to say it. So, are there mysterious forces out there that seem to be drawn to certain people for reasons beyond the realm of what we as human beings are capable of understanding? Whatever the case may be, you got to admit, all of this should give you a lot to think about when contemplating certain things that may have happened to you in your lives. And I know it has me working overtime to break those generational shackles and ancestral curses so that not only I can be free of whatever nefarious force is in mine and my family's orbit, but so that the next generations in my family will be able to live in relative safety and peace away from whatever those forces are. Let me know what you all think in the comments below, please, but also let me know why you think the way you do. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed hanging out with one another in the premiere. Spread the love by sharing this video. Check out the description box for some important links, as well as what the schedule is for the week. I'm going to be putting it down there so I don't have to announce it at the end of every video. I am so sorry that my neighbor decided to leaf blow on and off throughout the entire hour-and-a-half filming of this video. Yes, it did take me that long because I'm also losing my voice, not feeling really well. and trying to wait out when he's turning on and off the blower. So I hope you enjoy the video regardless of all of that. And don't forget, donations are what help me live off of. They're what help keep the channel going and help me do my very best to be able to bring you guys the best quality of work. I just bought new lighting equipment that I can't wait to set up thanks to you guys. So PayPal, Cash App, and Patreon information details in the description box, as well as my Amazon wishlist gift link. Don't forget, guys, if you purchase a December reading or if you purchased a November personal intuitive oracle readings for $20 to my PayPal or Cash App, you'll be entered to win a drawing for an extra large, a large, or a medium spiritual power box. I'm really not feeling that good, so I keep kind of losing my train of thought. Plus, I got to get back into the groove of things. I'm filming this on Friday, so I'm amped for a live intuitive oracle tonight, which is on Friday or Saturday, depending on what the week brings. But I always keep you guys updated with all of that. So if you're looking for the schedule or for any other information, ways to contact me, ways to send in listener encounters, please do not put them in the comments. They get lost, and then I'm not able to use them. So email me, or for any other correspondence as well, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. I handed in the Black Eyed Kids book, so it should be out end of December, early January at the latest, from what I understand, so I can't wait. If you want to purchase copies, Kindle or paperback, of any of my other books, Missing the Faith Theory, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, or Shadow Entity, Sleep Paralysis, and Beyond, it is available. They are available on Amazon for Kindle and paperback. As I said, if you want autographed copies of the paperback, please email me before making the purchase, and I will get that out to you. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Please keep watching the shorts. Keep liking the shorts. Keep sharing the shorts and commenting when you can on the shorts. If nobody told you today you're beautiful, you're amazing, you could literally do and be whatever you want to be in this world. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't or try to bring you down because they are not doing as well as you, okay? It's all about jealousy, guys. And if no one else believes in you besides you, guess what? I do. I believe in you. I got your back. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time.